welcome to the Sci-Fi Fantasy edition of Incoming, the weekly video podcast that looks back at the new releases for this week. This is episode 9, which looks back at the releases for week ending the 20th of November 2009, and as always, I'm your host, Neil Shook. In contrast to last couple of weeks, it's been a really bumper week as far as sci-fi releases are concerned. Lots of stuff going on. So I've got a top 10 for you with some quite stiff competition and also lots of other stuff to have a look at. So let's get on with the show. So first of all, at number 10 we have one of a couple of new releases this week from Redbox Games. This is Riviend the Shadow Viper. See, this looks to be some form of assassin, possibly dark elf. If nothing else, I'm a sucker for figures with dual wield weapons, and this is a really nicely posed, well detailed figure. Quite impressed with this one from Redbox. At number 9 we have one of a couple of releases this week from Mithril Miniatures. This is the Lord of the Nazgul, as seen at Pelennor Fields. Now, Mithril have had a license to produce Lord of the Rings figures for quite some time, and obviously this is a completely separate range to the GW ones, and are based a lot more on the books and the original illustrations as opposed to anything to do with the movies. And I think this is a nice interpretation of the Lord of the Nazgul, certainly nowhere near as OTT with either the look or the weaponry as what people are familiar with if they've seen the films, much more close to the original illustrations. But a nicely detailed figure this from Mithril. Number 8, we have a new release from Ground Zero Games, and this is a variation on one of their other VTOL vehicles. This is the new Cockroach, basically like a light scout assault vehicle. I must admit, I've always liked this sort of design when it comes down to sci-fi vehicles. The swivel jets, and yet it still looks something like a modern attack helicopter. And I just really like the look of this particular vehicle. I think it's a really good piece of work. All metal as well. Yeah, it's a really good kit. Well detailed. Looks awesome, I think. Number 7, we have a new release from Rapier Miniatures. And as soon as I saw this miniature, the first thing I thought of was Ray Harryhausen. You know, it has that kind of look to it. If you've seen films like Jason and the Argonauts, Clash of the Titans, that sort of thing, this miniature just has that Harryhausen look to it. It looks like it's almost should be animated from one of those films. This is the Scorpion Queen, and I think this is just a really good looking figure. It would certainly make an excellent addition to your fantasy wargames table. Really good stuff from Rapier. At number 6, one of several releases from Reaper this week. This is a Mountain Ogre, sculpted by Dave Summers. Reaper are always good, especially at the big monsters, and I think this particular one has just bags of character. The expression on the face and the sculpting is just really good. Excellent muscle definition. I just think this is an excellent looking figure. Top 5 now, and a new release from a company that I first featured a few weeks ago. This is Ron & Bones, a company that are producing a fantasy pirate game. This particular figure is Pelago Bill. As you can see, he's an undead pirate. Looking back to the undead pirates that Black Scorpion produced a few weeks ago, I think this ramps it up to the next level. Lots of extra details. I mean, I'm not too sure whether he really should be wielding that huge two-handed sword as far as pirates are concerned, but an excellently detailed miniature. Very impressed with this one. Number 4, we have the first of actually a couple of miniature figures featured in this week's show. This one's from the Rusted Heroes line, produced by Fantasization Miniatures. And as you can see, it's a really big, hulking figure. Head is slightly different from what I'd normally expect from a miniature. Probably the nose seems a little bit long, maybe. But huge amounts of muscle definition, nice large axe, everything you'd want in a miniature. Very impressive looking model on the whole. Into the top 3, and at number 3 we have a new release for Infinity by Corvus Belli. One of several this week. This is from their Asawira regiment. Infinity have a very almost anime look to their sci-fi armour. Whilst this pose is somewhat impractical with both the automatic weapon and the sword, something about the aesthetics really appealed. I like the way the armour looks. So yeah, I really like this figure. As I say, not exactly the most practical pose in the world, but as always, really good looking stuff from Corvus Belli. Their Infinity range constantly sets high standards for sculpting. You'll see some more releases in the roundup later on. And number 2 this week, the second miniature in the top 10. These are from Avatars of War, a couple of new miniatures they produced this week. Minotaur Lords, one with a large two-handed axe, the other with an axe and a spiked ball. Whilst the tallest figure from Rusted Heroes is pretty good, I think these particular figures really do define what fantasy miniatures should look like in a lot of ways. I know the whole look is kind of influenced by what we've seen before, but these are just absolutely awesome figures. Really are. I continue to be very impressed with the releases from Avatars of War. They put together some excellent stuff, and these are almost some of the best things I've seen so far from their range. Well worth checking out. At number 1, we have a somewhat unusual new release from Eureka Miniatures. These are 28mm Warrior Frog Toad Cavalry. Yes. They look in some ways quite bizarre, and you look at them and think, yeah, what on earth would I use these for? But there's just something about them. I mean, especially like, the ones wearing sashimonos and stuff like that. They just really, really appeal to me. I think they're excellently sculpted. I mean, it's just the whole thought. You got frogs armed with not only spears and swords, but flintlock pistols and muskets. Again, absolutely no idea what they'd be useful for, but they have a charm about them which I just found irresistible. So they're my number 1 for this week. However, as I said, an awful lot of new releases this week from various different companies. So having now seen my top 10, here's my roundup of the rest of the week's releases. And there we have it. As you can see, lots of new releases out this week, and it's actually quite unusual for releases like the Anima Tactics new miniatures from Sci-Fi Studios not to make my top 10. But lots of good releases out this week, and I hope you've seen something that has sparked your interest. Well, that's all we've got time for this week. Before I go, again, I just want to thank Bill at the Miniatures page and Zach at Tabletop Gaming News. These sites are a fantastic source of information, and without them, this podcast simply wouldn't be possible. And finally, if you want to view this podcast again, you can always catch it on Warboots TV. There's a constant stream of videos at the bottom of that page, and all the incoming videos will be viewable on that page from time to time. All that's left is to say thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it this week, and take care. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.